Welcome to college basketball net profit here on a Saturday morning, January 22nd. Ian Cameron, Connor Mack. We are ready for a huge Saturday card. Look, it's a huge Saturday card. Lots of games. Let's not waste time. Let's get right to it. We'll start as we always do with the early noon Eastern games. We'll start with the Colonial Athletic Association. It's actually the first game on the rotation order, and it's actually a game we both have some betting interest in. Hofstra taking on Northeastern. We've got Hofstra, 4-point road favorites here, 141, 142 being the total in this game. Hofstra, usually a team we expect to put up points and be a very good offensive team. It's been that way again this year, averaging 78.3 points per game, shooting 46% from the field, 33.9% from three-point range, and 80% from the free throw line, which is another reason why this team's a good offensive team. They make their free throws, and you can't always bank on certain teams to do that for you. So you got to like that about this Hofstra team. Northeastern, and we've seen this program. Bill Cohen's been there for a very long time. I don't know if I've seen this kind of run to the over that they've ever had in recent years. 9 straight overs for Northeastern. They've really found some level of offensive cohesion, but more than anything, it's been their defense has been, pretty poor, actually, especially the last 5 games. You're giving up 50.5% shooting to the opponent and 38.3% from three-point range. Just when you look at those kind of numbers, it's not exactly the kind of thing you want against a very high-scoring and a very capable offensive team like Hofstra. Yet this total, surprisingly enough, has gone down just a little bit. Now, Hofstra hasn't been necessarily an automatic over team. And on the road, they've actually trended 6-4 to the under, but Hofstra 5-2 to the over at home, and 9 straight overs between these two teams. When you look at head-to-head, last year, one of the games stayed under. It was the game that was here at Northeastern, and the game in Hofstra went over the total. But I do want to point out here with Northeastern, when I look at their numbers, and I pulled them up here, the conference numbers, and I find it's more important to look at conference data at this time of year. What teams do in November, to me, is not as important. I want to know what they're doing right now in conference play. And when I look at this Northeastern team here, and I look at their pace numbers, they've gone up a little bit, believe it or not, here in conference play compared to last year. It's not like they're playing fast, like really fast, but they're not walking the ball up the court either. So total's gone down. Don't know if I agree with that. I'm leaning over, and I believe Conor is as well. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I lean over here. Obviously, they see what we talk about all the time. These real early games, there's under, especially first halves, because both these teams are over teams. Hofstra and Hofstra's totals are been in the 150. Some of those have gone under, like they're in that range. That's why they're total. And then Northeastern's kind of been lower, and they've just cleared everything over 140, like you talked about, for the last 9 or 10 games. Hofstra on the road played okay. Like, they beat James Madison, but they have struggled on the road at certain spots. Still remember Stony Brook. Man, that game really hurt me. There's a few other ones. I would be leery. This has already moved to 4 of Hofstra here. Northeastern, not a good team, and they haven't played too well at home. But like Delaware, they lost by 6. Towson by 3. That was at Towson. But they played some close games at home. I'd be leery of laying it with Hofstra, and I agree with you. I have a small bet on the over here on 141.5. Or 141.
Right. Yeah, I would agree, especially if it's – I see 141s are now popping up and available at multiple books. So, to me, that's something that's worth looking at, in my opinion. And now that it's gone down a couple points, you at least get better value to go over the total here. Rutgers and Minnesota. We've got Minnesota 1.5-point home favorites, 131 being the total here in this game. Obviously, we have to talk about situationally what stands out even more than the matchup on the court. And it's that Rutgers is coming off the big home win against Iowa, 48-46. Rutgers team that outside of a pretty good, actually, road win at Maryland, it was actually their most recent road win. So maybe it's a sign they're ready to win on the road again. But prior to that, they had been the same old Rutgers where they struggle on the road, beaten by double digits by Penn State, by Seton Hall, lose by 35 at Illinois earlier this year. But they did finally play a better road game. But can they consistently do that? See, this is a dilemma game for me. Rutgers to me is better than Minnesota. I don't have much doubt about that. And, it makes you think, geez, shouldn't we be taking the 1.5 here with the Scarlet Knights? But the spot's dubious. They're coming off a huge win against Iowa. They've not been as good on the road now, really, throughout the last couple of years under Steve Peichel. But to me, they are better than Minnesota, who've lost 4 in a row. Now, they've lost 4 in a row, Minnesota, but they've done it against just a bruising schedule. And when you look at what these teams have faced, there's no doubt. I mean, Rutgers has faced pretty much the easier part of the Big Ten schedule so far. Minnesota's had to play Illinois, Indiana, Michigan State, Iowa these last 4 games. So things definitely have been tough for them. I get that. We'll see if they can bounce back here. They're just 1-5 now in Big Ten play, 0-4 in January. And look, they only had 7 players available to them last Sunday in that loss against Iowa. They had a game postponed because of COVID-19. It's unclear how many players will be available. They've had injuries. They've had COVID-19 protocol situations. They didn't have Eric Curry and Sean Sutherland on the floor for them against Iowa in terms of, and that's, guys that can score the basketball for the Gophers. So who's going to be available for them? I don't know. I actually want to really take Rutgers here, but man, the spot, it does kind of stink for them coming off the big home win. I still lean Rutgers, though. I would take Rutgers before I take Minnesota. Clearly a Minnesota spot. I get that. But will they be full strength? Who's going to be on the floor coming off the COVID situation they've had to deal with? And to me, I still think Rutgers is flat out better than the Gophers. So lean Rutgers. I probably won't end up pulling the trigger, though. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I'm not going to bet this too many games, but my lean was to Minnesota. This is a spot they desperately need to win at home, but this is the same team like you talked about. The injuries and the COVID, they've just got beat up. And even here at home, 10 to Iowa, they got lost, I think, to Illinois before that at home. I got to pass. Rutgers, here's the bottom line. I can't take them. Like, they're the perfect at home, catching points. As like 3 times this year, they beat Michigan, Purdue, and then Iowa the other night. They struggle so bad on the road. I don't know what it is. I just don't want this early matchup. It's a pass. If Minnesota was healthier and playing like they were early on in the year, I think this is a great spot for them. Still kind of think it is, but yeah, I'm going to pass.
So they played over the total in 3 straight games, Minnesota. Actually, they've really trended over 7-2 into the over in their last 9 games. But a lot of these games, Mississippi State, Michigan State, Michigan, twice against Michigan State, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa. A lot of those teams are either pretty good offensively or play with a decent amount of pace. Rutgers is going to slow it down a little bit. Early game, I could see this one actually being under as opposed to over here at 132 in this one. West Virginia, Texas Tech. We've got Texas Tech 7.5, 8-point favorites here in this game. 132 being the total for the most part. Texas Tech, of course, has been pretty solid this year. No question about that. Are we ready, though, to lay points with them here in this game? When you look at Texas Tech, it's been a great season so far for them. They've had a couple of big-time wins already on their resume. That goes without saying. I've been impressed with them at the defensive end of the floor. I've been impressed with them in that they've had key personnel out of their lineup for multiple games, specifically Terrence Shannon, McCullough. They've been missing some of those guys, and yet they've still, beat Kansas, beat Baylor, beat Iowa State at home 72-60 in their last game. But it's worth noting, a week ago today, Conor, at Kansas State, we were wondering, is Texas Tech immune to the flat spot or a clunker or a bad game finally? Well, that's when they had that bad game. Last Saturday at K-State, losing 62-51. And here we go. Kind of the same thing here. Early start, early Saturday afternoon game. It's kind of reminiscent of what we saw last week. I don't know if I want to lay this many with Texas Tech. Now, we've got West Virginia off back-to-back losses to Baylor and Kansas. So when you look at it, they just lost to Baylor and Kansas. We got a Texas Tech team that's beaten Baylor and Kansas. What can West Virginia do on the road is the question. And that's why, even though I'm not laying it with Texas Tech here, Conor, I mean, you look at West Virginia on the road, it's really the same problems, and really the same problems the last 2 games, where scoring continues to be a struggle for them. They only connect on 22 of 52 shooting in the 15-point loss at Texas on New Year's Day. They only shoot 17 of 63 in an 85-59 blowout road loss at Fog Allen against Kansas last week. And then against Baylor just a few days ago, 77-68. and they shoot 24 of 61. This is just not a good offensive team, and it's even worse for the Mountaineers and Huggy Bear on the road with this team in terms of being able to shoot straight. So if you can't put the biscuit in the basket, so to speak, that's the problem. They can play defense, and they're capable of doing that. But even lately, I mean, on the road in particular, gave up 85, 36 of 70 to Kansas, gave up 74, gave up almost 50% shooting to Texas, gave up better than 50% shooting to Kansas. You can't even consistently rely on West Virginia defensively either away from home. So I think it's kind of a good kind of desperation, urgency spot for West Virginia. For Texas Tech, we've seen them struggle already in these early Saturday games like they did last week. I think there's some kind of case to be made for West Virginia, but there's not enough meat on the bone or quality on the road for me to back them. I lean to the dog, but I don't know if I'll do anything more than that. What do you think here, CMAC, West Virginia, Texas Tech?
Yeah, I think if you like West Virginia, last night was to do it. I almost pulled the trigger at the 9.5. I thought that was, right about 10 was what I wanted here. And now it's dropped. They just don't score enough. And then you talked about it, Bavano, the defense. Where has that gone? Lately, they're giving up 74, 85, 77 to Baylor. They can't do that the way they score. This is just a under. But maybe it gets over because Tech will score enough because the defense is so bad. It's just a game I don't want a part of. Like I said, if I was to pull the trigger, I really stared at it hard last night, the 9.5, because I wanted double digits here. But I passed.
Yeah, this is something I've said before on college basketball shows I've been on, and it's true. Be careful of these home courts for these noon Eastern games, especially when it's teams that are not even playing in the Eastern time zone. Like this is actually 11 a.m. local time in Lubbock, Texas, this game. And you just wonder, is Texas Tech going to have that same home court edge, that teams normally would have in that spot? So I think the home court edge is probably diminished here because I don't think that's going to be a more sparse crowd than maybe they would have, say, if this game was like 3 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Eastern or certainly at night. So keep that in mind. 11 a.m. in Lubbock, will you get that same strong home crowd edge for the Raiders here? That's a big question. Virginia Tech, Boston College. We've got Virginia Tech, 5.5, 6-point road favorites, 128.5 being the total in this one. On paper, we have a mismatch here. I certainly like Virginia Tech a lot more than Boston College going into that game. Certainly, Mike Young continues to do a very good job with this program. They went through a little swoon there coming into the new year where they lost at Duke. They lost a home game against NC State coming off a COVID pause. I want to point that out. So you can't totally fault Virginia Tech for that. And then they had the tough 2-point loss at Virginia, but they bounced back the last couple, beating Notre Dame, beating NC State in a hard-fought road win. Can we trust this team to win by margin? That is the big question here on the road against Boston College. BC definitely has had a struggle, putting it mildly, this year. They get blown out by double digits at Louisville, which is a pretty bad loss considering how much Louisville struggled. They had a shocking road win at Clemson. Can't believe that happened, to be honest with you, although Clemson's kind of fallen apart right now like they typically do in the month of January. They have been competitive at times. 5-point loss to Georgia Tech, 2-point loss at Pitt. They just struggle, to score. They've really slowed their pace down as well this year. Of course, Earl Grant, now the former Charleston coach, is now the head coach there. And, of course, he played half-court, slow, methodical basketball, rely on sound defense more than anything else. He's brought that here to Boston College. It kind of feels like this game could be low scoring. I would lean under at 128.5 in this one. I lean Tech. Minus the 6 here. Again, those early start games, again, the home court edge, whatever they have at Chestnut Hill, probably diminished. Virginia Tech, just very, very efficient. Boston College, even with the slower pace this year, their defensive numbers definitely have improved. But for the last 5 games, they've kind of gone backward at that end of the floor. 75 points per game, 48% shooting. That's definitely a concern. And 40% allowed from 3-point range. It's an even greater concern because Virginia Tech is very, very 3-point heavy in terms of their offense. Guarding the perimeter has been an issue for Boston College. I just think we've got the better team, a matchup edge. They hit threes. Boston College ain't defending threes well in the last 5 games. They should win by margin here, Virginia Tech, but they're not always easy to trust. I still have a small bet here, Tech, and I would lean under the total as well. What do you think, Conor?
I think what you said, nailed it, but it's not going to get my money. That's where I'd look. I just don't trust Tech scoring. right now. This team just still has trouble. I thought the win at NC State the other day was good. They won by 3. They still play good defense. To go on the road, and they should take care of business here against BC. They're the same team they've been the last few years, Boston College. I don't like betting on them really or against them. They have a good win at home. There's always a few games they beat Notre Dame by 16. They always have a good weird home game. So be leery maybe of this today because they usually get their ass kicked on the road. But it was a pass for me, and I could only look under. But Boston College has given up more points than normal during some games. They were on an over 5-1 to the over until they just hit that under against Louisville on the 19th. So I got to pass on the total too.
And that's the issue here you're right, the fact that, they want to play slow and methodical, but defensively they've not been necessarily good, and that's pushed some of these games over the total. I mean, you're giving up the game where they gave up 81 points to Georgia Tech was stunning to me. It's not like the Yellow Jackets are phenomenal offensively, and Boston College didn't defend them. All right, we're going to stay in the ACC now for this next one at noon Eastern. Cameron Indoor, no relation to me, by the way. Syracuse and Duke. Duke 11.5-point home favorites in this one. 154-155 being the total here. Two good rivals in this one. We understand why the total's high in this one. Syracuse is really turning into a shootout type of team. A team that can really light it up on their best day and really at the defensive end stink it up on their worst day. And we've seen evidence of that here. And Clemson, that was a wild one, 91-78 for Syracuse just a few days ago at the Carrier Dome. Buddy Boeheim doing his thing, Joe Girard leading them, scoring the basketball. All of a sudden, too, Buddy Boeheim gets all the praise. Keep your eye on Jimmy Boeheim, the other one on this Syracuse team. He's really stepped it up the last few games. 13, 18, and 21 in the 3 of the last 4 games and averaging 14.2 points per game. So it's a Boeheim. There ain't no party like a Boeheim party. Hey, oh, that's what it is in Syracuse right now. It's a Boeheim. Boeheim's everywhere. Boeheim coaching and 2 Boeheim kids playing for this Syracuse team right now. That's what's keeping them afloat right now, offensively for sure. Unfortunately for Syracuse, they catch Duke off the overtime loss at Florida State. Probably doesn't sit too well with them. 79-78. I'll say this about Duke as well. Their defensive game's been in and out this year. Some games they've clamped down. They had a great win against Virginia Tech. They held them to just 26 field goals made in 61 attempts in that game. 76-65 win. They absolutely shut down Georgia Tech. Nice defensive performance. But he gave up 76 in a loss to Miami at home, right here at Cameron Indoors, 15-point home favorites. Lost that game outright earlier this month. The NC State win, they scored 88, but they still gave up 73 in that game. And, of course, they gave up 79 points to Florida State in the overtime loss earlier this week. So this is not a Duke team that's consistently locked it in defensively. Now, we know of the great talents they have. Wendell Moore and, of course, Paolo Banchero has been magnificent this year for this Duke team. Has really carried them in a lot of games. But defensively, they've gone in and out. Syracuse has shown you definitely their strength is not necessarily defending, but certainly offensively, where they're averaging in conference play 80 points per game, 46% shooting, 40% shooting from three-point range as well in their last few games. It's an early game. You wonder if Duke clamps down. You wonder if the shooting legs are there. That's because this is a rare noon Eastern start at Duke here. But, man, I'm not betting under in this game. Not with these two teams. Duke, I cashed an over with Duke in a Saturday afternoon game last week at home against NC State. That game flew over the total and ended up 161. That total was in the 140s. But the issue is the total is where it is, 155. Seems like the odds makers have got this one pinpointed pretty well. I was looking to bet over. I still lean over. I don't know if I like the number enough. Odds makers did a good job here. They didn't give me any bargain here at 154, 155, but I would still lean over the total. What do you think, Connor Mack?
Yeah, you're right. There's not a bargain here with this Syracuse team. I just don't get. They don't play very good defense, and they got to be on, like you said, the Boeheim, especially Buddy Boeheim. He's got to be nailing shots for them to be in the game. I lean them with the points. I don't love it. This is not one of my favorite ones to bet. Like you talked about, there should be points. There should be pace. But at 155, I think the line's pretty sharp. And I don't know. Duke's always better at home. This could be a 15-point win, kind of like NC State, because I think Syracuse just isn't that good this year. They're okay. They might get in the tournament. But I'd take the points with Syracuse, just the way they can shoot. That backdoor, that cover with the Boeheims, like I talked about, could maybe keep them in this one.
A lot of points, and we have seen in the past that Syracuse has given Duke some problems. Remember what they did in the tournament. Now, last year, Duke beat them handily 85-71.
Yeah.
That game, by the way, went over the total. And the over's been like 5 of the last 6 meetings have gone over the total.
Yes.
Duke versus Syracuse. Keep an eye on that. And the last 3 meetings, you had 156. You had one game where it was 185 in terms of points scored between these two teams. So 156, 185, and another 156 in the last 3 head-to-head meetings between Duke and Syracuse. And this total is 154. So I think we could squeeze it out. I think we can squeeze it out, the over here. I'm going to go forward with that. The total going over here, 154, 155. Seton Hall, St. John. Speaking of overs, we've got Seton Hall 2.5-point road favorites, 153, 154 the total. Seton Hall, definitely, the more I look at them, the one thing we've seen with Kevin Willard is over the years in this team is toughness, it's physicality, it's strong defense. I haven't seen that as much this year, and I've certainly not seen that as much of late. They gave up 87 and escaped against UConn 90-87. They gave up 96 points and a loss to DePaul just 9 days ago. And then against Marquette, they're in decent position in that game last week. Seton Hall, they came out with good energy, back and forth they went. And down the stretch, couldn't make a shot or make a stop, I should say, when they needed to against Marquette, and specifically Daryl Morcell, who had his way against Seton Hall down the stretch. I like the way they can execute offensively. I like Alexis Yetna, the South Florida transfer, what he's given them in terms of size and low post play this year for the Seton Hall Pirates. I like Bryce Aiken, Jared Roden, I should say. They've been very good. They just recently got Ike Obiagu back in the lineup from injury. The pieces are there for Seton Hall to be a great team, but the pieces just haven't all come together yet for them going into this game. So now they're laying 2.5 on the road. St. John's just got absolutely waxed by Creighton. And I know St. John's is a little flighty on the road. I still expected a lot better than that against Creighton. They got destroyed 87-64 a couple of days ago. I was fortunate to cash the over in that game. It just barely got there, thanks to Creighton scoring as much as they did. St. John's is still a over team to me until proven notice. Even the games that stayed under, the Georgetown game, that only stayed under because the total was in the 160s. Still ended up with 157 points in that game. The Creighton game got to 151 in terms of total points. They'd gone over in 3 straight before that. And when you look at the way these two teams match up here, you look at teams that Seton Hall plays fast. And the reason why you haven't always thought of them as an over team in the past, Conor, is because the defense has been so good. Well, now the defense hasn't been so good this year. So you're seeing Seton Hall kind of trend over. I mean, Seton Hall's 44th in the country in tempo. St. John's 6th in the country, the entire country, in terms of pace and tempo. And both of these teams have better offensive numbers in terms of efficiency than defense. So for me, this is over and in the low 150s if I'm betting this game. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, you can't talk me out of it. The only thing, it's kind of in the morning, this whole morning when we talk about some of these 150 totals, but you mentioned the pace of both these teams, and shocking how Seton Hall, you talked about, like giving 96, and losing at DePaul. This won't be easy. I think they have the better team, but St. John's plays their best basketball at home. I'd look for them to play well this morning. I'd take the 2.5. I think they could maybe win this outright. And yeah, I'm not taking an under. It'd be over, just pass.
Yeah, Seton Hall's had to battle a lot too. Remember, they had COVID stoppages earlier this year, and they just haven't been able to really get on track. And Kevin Willard, the really good coach, liked him for years, but he says we're in a little bit of a hole. He's games with 7 guys. Unfortunately, we played a lot of games. We need a little bit. I mean, he's kind of using the excuse. I don't like to hear that when you're kind of in a funk like this. You lose to DePaul, you lose to Marquette. I want to hear him say, you know what, we got to fix some things. We got to be better. We got to coach better, play better. I know a million coaches. Belichick says that all the time. But I like to hear him say that, Willard, not just, oh, but we had 7 days off. Oh, but we've had some players missing. Oh, but we had COVID. I mean, that's the excuse machine coming out, almost like it's acceptable, for Seton Hall to be playing the way they have for the last couple of days. So I'm kind of with you. St. John's is capable, especially on that home floor here. So in this little New Jersey, New York rivalry here, I wouldn't be shocked if Mike Anderson's St. John's team plays pretty, especially coming off an embarrassing loss, but they do play better at home. It's worth keeping that in mind for sure.
Yeah.
And they've got talent on this St. John's team, and you're not going to see them. The offense is their forte. So to see them only score 64 against Creighton was shocking when you've got the likes of a Julian Champagny and a Posh Alexander and guys that can fill it up for you. They're probably going to be much better today shooting the basketball. You would think correction is going to come there. Let's stay in the Big East. We've got Villanova and Georgetown, a good old Big East old school rivalry. Villanova 14-point road favorites, 139 being the total in this one. This has the potential to be a Villanova wax job, in my opinion. They're coming off a loss at home to Marquette, 57-54, just a few days ago. Georgetown on the road, they've not done enough for me to be impressive. You look at their road performances, they lose by 13 at a kind of meandering South Carolina team. Back in December, they get ripped by St. John's, 88-69 on the road. That's the game where I believe it was that game or the Butler game where Patrick Ewing kind of went off on this team. Like said, John Thompson Sr.'s rolling over in his grave watching us play right now. Ewing's getting frustrated. You can tell. They were better against Providence in their last game on the road, at least finally covered on the road, but still lost by 8 in that game. I don't really love the idea of going against Villanova off a loss. They've been very good in that role. You remember they lost at Creighton by 20 in December. What did they do in their next game? They returned home against Xavier. They won by 13, won and covered. So it's a team that I trust off a loss to play much better. This might be one of those games where I definitely have a strong lean to Villanova. I might do a first half and full game split. It's something that I'm really doing a lot more in all sports, kind of like baseball, 5 innings, full game, NBA, first half, full game. I've done that a lot there in that sport. This might be something I do here. Maybe a little Villanova first half, -6.5, -7 is what you can get with the Wildcats in the first half. And certainly maybe a look toward the -14, but maybe first half's even better because it's a decent number, 6.5, 7. Georgetown, not exactly the team certainly defensively I trust here. There's such a huge gap between these two teams defensively. There's no question about that. And I think it definitely could show up here. It's worth noting last year, these teams played at Georgetown. It was 76-63 in favor of Villanova. So they won by 13. That wouldn't be enough here in this one. But I definitely think you can see Villanova bounce back. I would lean first half full game. Conor, any thoughts here?
There you go. That score. I could see that kind of being today. I think Villanova takes care of business. But to back them with this many on the road, and yeah, Georgetown's dreadful. You had a few guys in the chat. Yeah, they've been horrible all year. Even at home as a dog. You think, wow, Georgetown catching this many? This would be the perfect game. Nova struggled scoring. I had Marquette, and I was wanting the 14 and a half points. I didn't think they'd win that outright. Nova, the thing is, they have that bad shooting night. They'll look, but when they're on and rolling, they're just tough to beat. And they've been especially good at home. That's why that loss was weird. They're a little more vulnerable on the road. It's Nova or pass, but I'm staying way far away from this one. But you mentioned a first half look. Maybe they come out hot because they were ice cold the other day against Marquette.
I think you'll definitely see that. They just couldn't make a shot. Their defense was good. And that's what Jay Wright said. Sometimes you just have one of those games where you can't get anything to fall. And Rara, please tell me how I pronounce that. But Wildcats 41-18 and 2 ATS in their last 61 following an ATS loss. Yeah, I knew it was good. I knew the numbers were very good. You don't be as consistently good year after year like Villanova unless you're very good when you have a setback. And they've been very good like that. Off a loss, no doubt. Vanderbilt, Florida. We've got Florida 6.5-point home favorites, 138.5 the total in this one. I think Florida continues to be very, very overrated. Now, they were fortunate to escape past Mississippi State. They did not start that game well. kind of a bad beat for me. I had Mississippi State +6 because I've been fading Florida a lot. Very overrated team, in my opinion. But they found a way. Give them credit for that. Tyree Appleby, Anthony DeRugi, they had a very solid games for Florida in that victory against Mississippi State, coming back from a deficit, outscored at Mississippi State by 14 in the second half to get the win in the cover, 80-72. Colin Castleton, though, out indefinitely for the Florida Gators, though, with a left shoulder injury. And, he's been a huge component to what's made Florida go the last few games. That's 15.4 points. That's per game. That's 9.1 rebounds per game, 2.8 blocks per game out of your lineup. With him injured now for this Florida team, I think that's going to be tough to overcome that a little bit. Vanderbilt definitely has not played quite so well lately in SEC play. They had a nice road win at Arkansas, which I'm still surprised they won that game. But since then, they lose outright as home favorites. South Carolina can't withstand prosperity. They lose by 12 at home against Kentucky. They do beat Georgia on the road. Georgia's having a tough year. And then they lose. Not a bad showing against Tennessee last time out, 68-60 at home, but just failed to cover in that one. See if they can go on the road. To be honest with you, this team's actually played better away from home. The Georgia road win, they beat Arkansas on the road, they win and cover at Hawaii. They actually look like they feel more comfortable here away from home. They're 4-1 ATS this season, in fact. Vanderbilt on the road. I'm going to take the points here with the Commodores. Even Florida was a very, very fortuitous point spread cover. If you took the Gators against the Bulldogs, they don't have Castleton. These are the kind of spots where I expect Florida to do what they do. And that's often play down to their competition. They do that so many times. I think there's a chance they do that here against Vanderbilt. So I like the points here, the 6.5 with Vandy. Connor Mack, what do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned with no Castleton. They were lucky. They just played a great second half and just got that cover against Mississippi State. I had to stay off the game. I'm staying off here, too. I want a few more points with Vandy. But you're right. I don't trust Florida. Good luck to anyone that wants to lay the 6.5. You mentioned it. Vandy's been pretty good on the road. Like you talked about, they've had some decent road wins. So, yeah, I'd lean the points with them. I just haven't pulled the trigger.
All right. I want to bring up this Missouri Valley game that's at 1 p.m. Eastern here as well. Valpo, Indiana State. Indiana State, 3.5-point home favorites, 138.5 the total. I want to bring it up because situational handicapping 101 is going to tell you this is a brutal spot for Valpo. It was a huge win in overtime the other night against Northern Iowa, 83-80. Back and forth it went. And now they got to go on the road here and face Indiana State, who, they're struggling. They've lost 3 in a row here in Missouri Valley conference play. But still at home, it can be a bit of a tricky team. And Valpo coming off a win like that, it's going to be interesting to see if they can withstand prosperity, if you will, going into this matchup. And you look at Indiana State here, only giving up 33% from three-point range, which isn't bad. And, of course, this is a Valpo team that can really get hot from three-point range. So we'll see matchup-wise if this is a good one for Indiana State. Indiana State's still a pretty solid defensive team. Valpo, not so much. I mean, last 5 games, they've given up 78 points per game, 50% shooting as well during that span, which isn't great by any stretch of the imagination either. And the 39% shooting allowed from three-point range as well. So Indiana State's actually a pretty capable three-point shooting team at 37%. So you worry about that here. Indiana State's also been much better from the free throw line. I kind of like the Sycamores here, and you would think, hey, they've lost 3 in a row, and you got to lay 3.5 with them. Yeah, but they have the spot edge, and I think the matchup's actually pretty solid here for the Sycamores. So I think there's a reason Indiana State favored in that game. Connor, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I didn't bet it, but I don't blame you. Yeah, Valpo off that big win. But I thought they're playing better basketball as of late, even some of those losses before the Northern Illinois win. I'm talking about Indiana State with a few losses. I think the line's pretty solid here, 3.5. I don't want either team, though. I'd want some more with Valpo. With so many games today, this was just a pass for me.
All right, Chattanooga VMI. Chattanooga, 5.5-point road favorites, 147 the total. I'm going to be brief on this one. I like VMI as a home dog. I've been backing this team a lot. The Keydets, some great Jake Stevens, Cameron Kerfman, shoot the ball well, shoot the three well. They're on a little bit of a spurt right now, a little bit of a roll. Look what they did the other night. They destroyed, who was it they played? I think it was Samford, I believe. They absolutely killed them in that game a couple of days ago. Samford's not good, obviously, defensively, but still, VMI is playing some solid basketball. And I like Chattanooga. The Mocs are one of the better teams here. You look at this SoCon conference, they're a solid team, and they've had a nice season. They're playing, for the most part, pretty well. They've won 6 of their last 7 games and gone 5-2 against the spread during that time. But I think VMI can hang in this game. They're really trending in a good direction. They haven't necessarily been blown out in a lot of games either. I mean, other than a really shoddy loss against Greensboro, they lost by 16. They just didn't shoot well that night. They beat Wofford. They beat Furman, 2 of the better teams in this conference. They lost by 1 at East Tennessee State. They beat Citadel. They beat Samford. 6-point loss at Mercer. I mean, they have been in pretty much every single game. They've been trending over as well, and I think we can get this game over the total. You look at last year, 84-79 VMI at home. They were home dogs. They beat Chattanooga, and that game flew over the total, 163 points in that game. I like VMI, and I like the over. I think it's reasonable here at 146.5, the total in this one as well. Chattanooga doesn't play fast, but they're efficient offensively, and that can overcome them playing a little bit slower, I think, for this game to go over the total. Conor Mack, any thoughts here? A little SoCon, Chattanooga VMI.
Yeah, Chattanooga got me the other day. I had Greensboro. Like I said, the day after, I'd still take it, those 3.5 at home. They went in a bad spell. They have trouble scoring at times, does Greensboro. But they played their best basketball at home. They just lost by 8 in the end in the second half. I watched the whole game. Chattanooga, like you talked about, it's efficient. VMI, this game's going over. I had it circled last night. It's kind of gone up. I mean, if I could get a 6, I'll definitely be on VMI. I'm already on the over. Like I said, I like 5.5. I think if I get a 6, I'm going to take it.
All right, good stuff. All right, let's go to Kentucky and Auburn. This is definitely one of the bigger games in the early slate. We've got Auburn 3.5, 4-point home favorites, 149 the total in this game. If the images and the reports we're seeing out of Auburn for this game are any indication, where it's freezing cold down there apparently, and there's students braving the cold to get a seat in the arena for this game this afternoon. This is a high demand game, obviously. Kentucky coming to town. This could be a great home atmosphere for Auburn, and great is what this team has been on their home floor this year. 9-0 straight up for the Auburn Tigers, 8-1 against the spread at home this year. This is going to be a big challenge here for Kentucky, and Kentucky's best game. And look, the Tennessee game was the perfect game. I don't think Kentucky was capable of playing better than that. Are you kidding?
That was unreal.
6 and 107 points against Tennessee's one of the best defensive teams in the country. And Kentucky just ripped them for a century spot in that game. And then they come back, and they were lethargic and horrible for extended stretches of that game against Texas A&M on the road. And we're very fortunate to get the comeback win. They didn't cover. If you got the best of the number with A&M, you got A&M with the points there, staying inside the number, a 6-point loss for A&M in that game. When I'm looking at this game, though, I think Kentucky's going to have some challenges here. Remember, the best team they've played on the road, they actually lost to Notre Dame as well on the road back in December. But, LSU on the road, and they lost that game 65-60. I think Auburn's the right side here. I'm looking at laying the 3.5, 4 here with Auburn. You could argue that, you're laying more than a possession. You're laying more than a bucket in what still could be a close game. But I think there's some advantages here that Auburn has going into this game against Kentucky. I mean, when you look at the way it sets up for them in this game, the Wildcats, they're terrific in terms of, scoring inside. But I'm telling you what, Walker Kessler for Auburn, this is a guy that can shut you down right around the rim. And, they're going to have to rely more on that 3-point shooting. To me, it's harder to make your threes on the road. Obviously, they got a bunch of guys that can make those shots. And wait till they get C.J. Frederick back, if they do. that is, because he hasn't played yet this year for Kentucky, but they've got Kellen Grady, the Davidson transfer, Severe Wheeler's capable from the perimeter. We know certainly Ty Washington, he's going to be challenged today, in my opinion, because, they're going up. Auburn can get you sometimes too as well, in terms of inside, outside. They're very good around the rim, like I said. And I think Auburn's defensive improvement this year is fully on display. What's gotten Auburn into trouble in the past under Pearl is that they don't always play consistent, sound defense. They're doing that this year, holding teams to 38% shooting, 31% shooting from three-point range, and that's key, obviously, when you're facing Kentucky. I think Auburn favored for a reason here. I would look Tigers in this matchup. What do you think here, Conor? Should be a pretty good one in the SEC.
Yeah, I lean Auburn as well. Kentucky just hasn't played well on the road. At 149, I could only look over. I mean, Auburn is just regularly in the 80s, and I got to think Kentucky shoots better than the other night. I don't know if they shoot like Saturday. That was freaking insane, that Tennessee game last Saturday. But I told people on the show, I was leery of that laying 7.5 against A&M. A&M covered. But, yeah, this should be a good one. I don't think I'm going to bet it. I'm not going to get to the window with Auburn. I'd lean them, and I'd lean over.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore the over. You're right, because Auburn's been trending that way. 4 straight overs prior to the game against Georgia, and Georgia just, you can't always rely on them offensively. They're not a great basketball team. But prior to that, Mississippi, Ole Miss, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, all those games went over the total. And look, Kentucky will pose more offensive threats than than Georgia did for this Auburn defense. But when I look at it, I think Kentucky's defense, look, they gave up only 58 to A&M, but they gave up 79 to Tennessee. They gave up 77 to Georgia. And on the road, to me, their defense is going to struggle here with what Auburn can throw at them as well. So I think it does go over that total.
The shots, too, for Kentucky, though, this year on their road games just haven't dropped. Like at LSU, they only scored 60. LSU is playing good defense, but they've been in the 60s. So I think the shots dropped tonight. So it should be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to how that one plays out. No question. All right, let's go to Wilmington and Towson. We've got Wilmington, the Colonial. We've got Towson 10-point home favorites, 135.5 being the total here in this one. I'm bringing this up because I believe in this matchup here, and Towson, look, has been pretty solid overall. They've had a nice year. But here comes Wilmington, who are on a 6-game point spread streak. And look, they didn't start the season well necessarily, but they're playing their best basketball right now. They just beat Delaware outright as home dogs. They won and covered against Elon. They were 7.5-point road dogs at Charleston and won 86-78. They were 6-point dogs at James Madison a couple days ago, and they ended up winning that game 71-70. Towson's very good. I understand that. They've beaten Hofstra, Northeastern at home, went on the road, beat Elon, crushed William and Mary, won and covered at home against Charleston. But they got to win this by double digits against a Wilmington team that's now covered 6 in a row, won 6 in a row. They've been undervalued. They've been good in the underdog role. You look at last year's meetings head-to-head, both in January, both here in Towson, 4-point game, 3-point game between these two teams. Flat out too many points, in my opinion. I'm taking the 9.5, 10 here with the UNC Wilmington Seahawks here. I think it's a close game. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, it's tough for me because Towson's been so good all year, and they are better than they were last year. They've just been covering games. But the number for them is starting to creep in some of these games, like you talked about. And here's a spot. I'm with you. If I had to take this game, I'd be on Wilmington. I've just delved into it a little bit last night, but that'd be my lean as well. Mute.
You always like to see teams getting better as the season goes on. Wilmington, they've improved offensively here the last few games. Defensively, they've stayed around, the same. There's no doubt that Towson's playing well, good at both ends of the floor. But I definitely think we've got, and last year, again, single-digit margins with these two teams head-to-head. So Wilmington on a 6-game covering streak coming into this game. I just think it's too many points. We have a more competitive game than you're going to give Wilmington 10 when they've won 6 in a row here, and they've been competitive with Towson both meetings last year. So Anyway, I like Wilmington there. All right, Oklahoma State, Texas. Texas, 8.5-point home favorites, 125.5 the total in this one. This is a very interesting spot here because you've got certainly a Texas team, you would think wants to bounce back here. They had a loss to Kansas State. Didn't probably sit too well with them. Kansas State's been one of those teams, though, that now has suddenly had a couple of really solid wins. I mean, they beat Texas Tech just recently. And, of course, the big win that they had against Texas recently as well. So Texas looking to bounce back from that. We'll see if they can do that. As far as I'm concerned here with Oklahoma State, they shocked Baylor, and I did not see that coming, considering that they were really struggling before that. And they did beat Texas earlier this year at home, 64-51. So Texas is looking to avenge that game. You've got Oklahoma State off the Baylor win, an escape against TCU. They pretty much fell into the letdown spot. They didn't cover in that game. They were 5-point home favorites. They only won by a point. Texas probably going to have full focus. They've now lost 2 in a row at Iowa State and the home game against Kansas State. They already lost to Oklahoma State on the road earlier this year. Kind of feels like this is payback time, Smackdown City, if you will, for Texas. And look, prior to the loss against Kansas State on their home floor here, they had beaten Oklahoma by 14. They had beaten West Virginia by 15 on their home floor in conference play. To me, this definitely feels like Texas gets them and probably gets them by margin. So I'd look to lay the 8.5 here with the Longhorns. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, this is a dead pass for me. I got to think Texas plays better. They kind of that was the worst game they played, I thought, on the road all year, especially up to that point, that January 8th game at Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State's playing a little better basketball lately. Talk about beating Baylor. Came from behind against TCU to get the win the other night, but not to cover. 8.5, this is always that number. When Texas has looked really good, they'll cover this with ease. But when they've struggled, usually it's only been on the road, though. So, I mean, they're at home. I lean that way. I'm not going to bet this game, though.
Texas, too, when they win by double digits. We've seen that. You look at every recent Texas win, it's not a close game. When they win, by a pretty sizable margin. So that's why I think if you like Texas, and I clearly do in this spot, lay the points, because it seems like when they win games, they win by 10, 12, 14, 15. That's been the norm. And I think Oklahoma State's walking into a tough spot here in this one. Remember, Oklahoma State prior to these last 2 wins, this was some pretty shitty basketball that they were playing. And maybe they have turned the corner and they compete in this game, but they're going to have to prove it to me here. Florida State and Miami. Next up, we've got Miami, 2.5-point home favorites, 146 the total in this game. Should be an interesting spot here with these two rivals, if you will. It's not football, obviously, but still Miami and Florida State. Jimmy Larinaga just doesn't get enough credit for what does here at Miami. Miami's a tough place to win when it comes to basketball. And this team right now, just I'm impressed. I mean, at 14-4 on the season now for Miami, you look at what they've done recently, just very impressive. Home wins against NC State, Wake, Syracuse, the big upset at Duke, 76-64 as 15-point dogs, nearly beat Florida State, 65-64, and then crushed North Carolina, 85-57. I think it's payback time here for Miami in this game. They lost. That's the only loss, was that 1-point loss at Florida State in a game that they had every opportunity to win. There's a lot of things coming out from that game. They got to rebound a little bit better. I think that's something they can fix. Florida State, they've been, they actually struggled a little bit for a period of time. They've actually started to play better. 5 straight wins: Louisville, Miami, Syracuse, Duke, North Florida. You can throw that one out, though. That was obviously non-conference, 86-73, but they didn't cover in that game. But there is a scheduling advantage here for Miami. They were at home against Carolina. They destroyed the Tar Heels. They've been off since Tuesday. Florida State had to play that rescheduled game against North Florida on Thursday. So it kind of takes away from their prep here of Miami. And you've got Miami in revenge for losing to the Seminoles earlier this year. And they're on a roll. They're 9-1 on their home floor. I think Miami's the side here. You only have to lay 2.5. I'm actually going to take the money line, and I always do this with the small favorites. Rather than lay the short number, I just go minus 140 here money line for Miami. I think they get the win here. Jim Larinaga, just outstanding coaching job. What else is new? Nothing new there. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I've been riding Miami here for a long time, and I've been on Florida State. I didn't take the North Florida game, but before that, the last 3 or 4, they're finally playing better basketball, including beating Miami. Miami covered by a point. I like Miami at home. Like you talked about, if you don't want to, lay the 2.5, take the money line. It should be a good basketball game. And with both these teams, they both can score. Of course, it could stay under, but with Miami, I got to look over, especially at home. I think this game gets in the 70s. So it's already moved up a few points to about 147, but I'd only lean over.
All right, leaning. I could lean that way as well. Miami's shockingly this year, totals-wise, they've kind of transformed a little bit. Although finally they've come back to the pack a little bit with their totals because they made the adjustment 150s. But this one is now down in the 140s, so they've made a little adjustment downward with Miami going under in 3 straight games. So maybe there is some value now to go over again now that we're back down to the 140s with totals in Miami games. I want to mention this one in the A10. Davidson and Fordham. Davidson 10.5-point road favorites, 136.5 the total in this one. Davidson is a team that I've been taking them over the total a lot this year, and for the most part, it's worked out well for me. And the reason is they just shoot the ball so well. They're just so efficient under Bob McKillop. They always are. They just take good shots. They don't, they take good shots. They make a lot of them. 77.8 points per game, 50% shooting, 42% from 3-point range. The one thing about Fordham this year is under Neptune, the new head coach, who was a Jay Wright assistant, they've finally got a little offensive fluidity to them. They can finally score a little bit. They're actually playing a little bit faster. Fordham was a terrible offensive team and played at a snail pace last year. They've kind of picked it up from a pace standpoint this year, and we have seen their games trend over the total a little bit more. I think we see that here. Total's reasonable, 136. Davidson plays slow, but they make up for it with efficiency because, they're very, very good offensively, and I think you're going to see that here in this game against Fordham. By the way, Davidson against Fordham head-to-head. Yeah, look at this one-sided series history here since March of 2019. Actually, you can go back further than that. Since January of 2018. 75-45 Davidson. 76-52 Davidson. 79-69 Davidson. 77-52 Davidson. 74-62 Davidson. 79-49 Davidson. And last year, 73-58 for Davidson. I actually think the number's short on Davidson here. In this one. And when you look at Davidson too, they are coming off that hard-fought road win. Maybe a little letdown. They look past Fordham a little bit. Does concern me, but I'd still look to Davidson before Fordham. But I like the total more than the side. I like that 136. I think it gets over that. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I was just on that over on the Richmond game. They lost by 13. I think this number's pretty spot on. Davidson can score quickly. They could cover this number, but I'd only be on the home dog here, 10.5. So I lean that way. I wrote this last night. I put, I lean the plus 10.5, and yeah, I'm on the over 136.
Now, William and Mary and Drexel, I'll bring this one up briefly because I like the over here simply because William and Mary is abandoned playing any sort of defense. I mean, that's become very, very clear in their recent games. Against competition in conference. The 0-7 straight up, 1-6 against the spread, by the way, on the road for William and Mary this year. I mean, they've just been absolutely hideous defensively. They've gone over the total in 4 straight games. They did have a win against Northeastern. They did have a shocking win against Hofstra. Back-to-back wins as underdogs. They actually fought James Madison very tough, covered as dogs, but the bottom fell out against Towson. They gave up 91 points in that game. They did cover against Delaware last game, 84-74, and they're actually 4-1 ATS their last 5 conference games. They actually might be worth a look here as dogs because they've been scoring the ball better, even though their defense, like the last few games, I mean, just it's been awful. They're giving up 80.4 points per game, 46% shooting. It's just not good at all. Drexel, capable offensive team, 70 points per game, 45% shooting. And coming into this game, they've scored in the 70s 3 of their last 4 games. So I would look, I like the over for sure Be careful, though, with the William and Mary betting against them, because they went on this crazy streak of not covering a single point spread until late December, and that has left them dramatically probably undervalued. And because they've been power rated so low after that bad start, that's since then they've covered 4 of their last 5. So, to me, William and Mary, believe it or not, actually might be the side here, because they've just been way undervalued. And they've actually started to cover some numbers because they dropped the power rating so much on them. So I lean to the dog, and I definitely like the over here just because of the struggles defensively of this Tribe team. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I get why you're on the over. This is a pass for me. That lone game I took was Towson, and William and Mary didn't get it done. But you're right. Before that, they've just been awful on the road. But they did cover against Delaware, like you talked about. I like Drexel, but I'm not going to lay 15 with them. This was just a game that was a cross out for me. Pass.
All right, we move on now to, as we continue along here. Thanks to everyone for joining us, by the way. 152 live viewers. Hit the like button. We appreciate that very much. All right, Tulane, Central Florida, UCF 7-point home favorites, 140.5 being the total in this game. Central Florida, what a comeback that was for them. And Johnny Dawkins has himself a nice little team this year for sure. I mean, they played well, now 11-5 on the year. They rallied to beat East Carolina in overtime, 92-85. In their last game, bounced back from a terrible performance against South Florida, 75-51. They had the home win against Memphis, also a home loss to Temple. That's the one thing that concerns me going into this game, Connor, is there's been a little inconsistency with Central Florida, and all this Tulane Green Wave team does for the most part. Now, they did lose at home finally to SMU, 75-66 in their last game. They didn't cover, but for the most part, Ron Hunter's done another remarkable job. It's not exactly a team laden with talent and huge, 4 or 5-star recruits necessarily, but he gets the most out of them. For the most part, they play solid defense, and even though they're offensively challenged at times, they seem to get good shots, and they've really relied on that defensive presence in some of their games, beating Wichita outright on the road as dogs, crushing South Florida. They should have beat East Carolina on the road and lost in overtime. They beat Cincinnati on the road. They beat Memphis at home. They're just find themselves in every game, and when I see Tulane in this road dog role, and it was like that last year a lot with Tulane as well, I just can't avoid them. Can't avoid taking them when they're getting points on the road, and that's where I'm going here. Green Wave, riding the green wave, if you will. +7 in this one. Connor, any thoughts here?
This game, shout out to everyone in the chat, by the way. Appreciate you guys being here. What's up, Beach Boss? Good to see you, my man. It's been a long time. I hope you are doing well. And everyone else in here. Rar Murray, all regular guys. Elliot V, Billy Pilgrim, Cab. What's up, my guy, Rem Most? Real Deal Prime, The Grinder, Banana and Grapes, Razor Sharp Picks, Jay Peasy, Puzzler, Polly Walnuts, all our guys. Shout out to you guys. Hit the like button. I'm with you here. This one I circled. There's so many games today, Domano, but I wrote last night because I've been on Tulane here, as of late as well. I like UCF too. So yeah, it's one I have circled, a lean. I have not bet it because like I said, there's just a shitload of games, but it's definitely one I have circled here. I just haven't bet it yet.
All right, we're down to about 40 minutes or so left in the show, so we'll try to pick up the pace a little bit here. In terms of keeping the analysis a little bit briefer. Let's go to let me see. Let's go to Baylor, Oklahoma here. Very good one in the Big Ten. Baylor 3-point road favorites, 136 the total in this game. This kind of sets up like an Oklahoma spot. It really does. And Baylor, look, they haven't been pushing their way easily past anybody lately for as good as they've been. And look, finally we're starting to see the grind of the Big 12, I think, catch up to Baylor a bit. Remember, people were not expecting Baylor to be as good as they were in November and December after the national title game. They lost some key pieces from that team. Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell. I mean, you go on down the list of some of the guys they lost from that title team last year. They were expected to have some growing pains. They didn't. They were rolling early. Now we're seeing the growing pains hit Baylor a little bit. They've been up and down here. They have the stunning loss to Oklahoma State in conference play. Texas Tech beats them. So they have definitely not been unbeatable here now that we've gotten into the rigors of Big 12 conference play. They're going to be going up against a Sooners team that we know is very capable. They nearly beat Kansas at home in their last game, 67-64 with better late game execution. They probably win that game. They beat Kansas State at home. They beat Iowa State at home. Most of their losses have been on the road. Road loss at TCU, double-digit loss at Texas. But I think Oklahoma is very, very capable here. Baylor definitely has to watch out here, especially considering they're on the road for a second straight week. Tuesday at West Virginia, Saturday now here in Norman today. That's not an easy scheduling spot either. So I think there's a reason Baylor's very short road favorites. They're short for a reason. It's because I think they've got themselves a hell of a challenge on their hands here. And Oklahoma, Porter Moser's going to try to slow them down, play some good defense. Oklahoma, is definitely, that's where they're at their best on the defensive end of the floor. They're only allowing 30% from three-point range. That's key against Baylor. Baylor can stroke from three, 36.9. Oklahoma only giving up 30.9. I think we have ourselves a chance for a home outright upset win, but I'll take the 3 here with Oklahoma. Connor, what do you think here?
Yeah, me too. I wish I was getting a few more points. Their struggles, I think, have brought this down a little bit. I think this could have been 6, just a few weeks ago. Oklahoma, the last few years, they played Baylor really well at home. Oklahoma's sloppy with the ball sometimes. I lean Oklahoma. I just don't love it. I'm really high on this Baylor team, but you're right. They weren't going to, after you talked about winning the national championship, losing all those pieces that they did, they weren't going to, stay that hot, especially going through that conference play. So it's just a game I think I'm going to stay off in the end. I just want a few more points with Oklahoma.
All right, let's do a little whack pack. No, I'm not talking Howard Stern anymore. We're talking college basketball here. We've got New Mexico State and Stephen F. Austin, and we've got Grand Canyon versus Sam Houston State. That's why I called it the WAC pack, WAC conference play right here. Back-to-back games in this conference. Stephen F. Austin, 1-point home favorites, 142.5 the total. Stephen F. Austin's coming on like a freight train. They started the season slow. They're playing better. And they're favored against New Mexico State, perennially one of the top teams in this conference. Kind of makes me think the Lumberjacks might be the way to go in that game. As slight home favorites. Grand Canyon, Sam Houston State. I like Grand Canyon, even though they're on the road in this game. Sam Houston State, I don't trust them here necessarily. Grand Canyon's not as good on the road sometimes, but I don't trust Sam Houston State offensively because they can go into scoring droughts. I don't necessarily always trust them at the defensive end, and they're a terrible free throw shooting team, and that's going to show up in a close, competitively lined game like that. So I'd look at the home team in the one game, Stephen F. Austin. I'd probably look at Grand Canyon in the other game, Sam Houston State, in that WAC pack of conference games in the WAC today. What do you think here, Connor?
I like Grand Canyon, but I just don't love that they're laying a point and a half on the road like you talked about. And Stephen F. Austin, I leaned him a little bit, but I'm still, last week's that loss at Sam Houston, 49-41, still in my head. I mean, they beat Lamar, but only by 8.
Beat Abilene.
But that big win against, Grand Canyon, it's a pass. I wrote it down last night. I just don't know what team's going to show up. They are better at home, though, Stephen F. Austin.
Yep. Georgia, South Carolina, 10-point home favorites. South Carolina, 144. I'll be brief here. 2 bad teams. 2 pretty bad defenses. 2 teams that play moderately fast in terms of pace, and you're only getting a total in the mid-140s. Play it over, in my opinion. That's what I did here. Connor, any thoughts? Georgia, South Carolina?
Pass. I don't even lean Georgia, but I don't even want the 10 with them.
Missouri State, Loyola, Chicago. A little Missouri Valley here. We've got Loyola, Chicago, 7.5-point home favorites, 138 the total. I keep thinking Missouri State can hang in this game. I know Loyola Chicago outstanding again. What else is new? Porter Moser's gone, but the tradition of winning isn't gone. They've had another great season. They're, against the spread, they've still been pretty solid overall, winning for their backers. What are they in terms of ATS? No, actually, they're only 6-6 ATS. So there you go. They haven't exactly been point spread darlings. Missouri State is profitable ATS this season. They're 4-2 ATS on the road. Missouri State coming off 3 straight wins in conference play. The only loss in conference play so far was a 1-point loss at home against Northern Iowa. They beat Bradley. They beat Drake at home. Very good Drake team. Southern Illinois won by 5. Crushed Valpo. Destroyed Illinois State a few days ago. I think the Bears have what it takes to hang in this game. I'll look to take the points here. You can get a healthy 7.5, 8 in some spots with Missouri State. Yeah, I like Loyola Chicago, but this is a solid basketball team, that's coming into their building here. Missouri State's one of the top, I think, 3 or 4 teams, in my opinion, this year in the Missouri Valley. Gage Prim is a terrific scorer. They've got Isaiah Mosley as well. Donovan Clay. They play solid defense. I think they can give Loyola a game in this one. Any thoughts here, Connor?
I'm going to pass. I wanted a few more points with Missouri State. You're right. They are one of the better teams. I think Loyola Chicago is better, but this is my dread, the 7.5 line here. It's just I'm going to pass. I want a few more points with Missouri State, but I think it could be a close game as well.
Right, yeah, that's a good one. Looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. So is this one in Conference USA. 2 of the better teams in this conference: UAB, Louisiana Tech. We've got Pick'em. Actually, UAB -1, 144. Now, I like UAB here. UAB went on the road, beat North Texas. I think I can rely on Andy Kennedy's team to play better defense as well. So that's the one thing sometimes you have a problem with in terms of Louisiana Tech. Not always fluid at the defensive end of the basketball court. And the numbers kind of bear that out. Actually, UAB does have the better defensive numbers across the board. They're actually slightly better offensive. UAB is a much better offensive team as well than they've been in years past. I'll excuse them for the loss at Rice. That was kind of a letdown spot after the big, huge road win at North Texas. But they bounced back strong the last 2 double-digit home wins against Florida International, Florida Atlantic. Louisiana Tech's a really good team, and they've won 4 straight, covered 4 straight. But I've already seen UAB go on the road and beat a terrific Conference USA team in North Texas. Why can't they do the same here? And we don't have a track record of Louisiana Tech winning these big games, to be quite honest with you. So I like UAB here. As long as you don't have to lay more than 2, like you can actually take money line at a good price here. I think UAB gets the win. I actually think they're the slightly better team as well. What do you think here, Connor?
I think they might be a little bit better, but I just don't see any value laying 1 here. I think Tech's played their best basketball as of late, but I can't trust them at all either. So this game was a quick cross out for me.
All right, let's go to the Citadel here. Back to the SoCon, because I've been betting this team a lot this year against East Tennessee State. ETSU 7.5, 8-point home favorites, 154 the total. So the Citadel was an under team for a bit earlier this year. All of a sudden, I think the odds makers caught up to their style of play under Duggar Bockham. Just to jack up as many threes as possible, play fast, don't play great defense. But now they over-adjusted to those unders, and now we're seeing the pendulum swing the other way. Citadel's gone to the over now in 5 of their last 6 games, 5-1 to the over. 6-1, I should say, to the over in their last 7 games. I was on the over against Wofford the other night. It easily got there, 89-77. I'm back to the over here in this one. Mid-150s, I think it gets there in this one. And again, ETSU, the Buccaneers, they went over with Samford, a team that plays fast and a team that doesn't play great defense, kind of like what they're going to see here from Citadel. Furman game, a good offensive team. Paladins, terrific offensive team. That game went over the total. Western Carolina, fast-paced team, no defense. That game went over the total for East Tennessee State. So when East Tennessee State plays teams that can shoot, play with some pace, don't play great defense, those are the games that have been going over the total. The VMI game, the Western Carolina game, the Furman game, the Samford game, all going over the total here for this East Tennessee State team. So I like the over here in this game as well between East Tennessee State and the Citadel. As far as the side goes, I'd like to take, the Citadel here, but I can't get out of my mind that last year between these, and the Citadel beat them at home last year, but East Tennessee State beat them 112-84 on their home floor last year. So it was all East Tennessee State at home. I actually think I lean to the Citadel here with the points, but I definitely like the total more over this 150. Looks like 154 is where it is right now. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't blame you. The one under I was on the Mercer game. It went under out of those. It's just a little bit high. It's back up to 155. It did, that VMI game was 160. It got over, and this very well could, but it's just not one that I wrote it down last night. Just what you said. I wrote down Citadel leaned at plus the 8 and only lean over, but I'm not going to play it.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. And Rutgers, by the way, I want to mention the line has gone from Minnesota 1.5 to Rutgers -3. So we've got some serious absences. Clearly, not everybody's back from these COVID issues on Minnesota. So make
Yeah, I
sure
don't know
you're
who's
aware
going
of
to
that.
play for them.
Yeah.
They're going to barely have any guys, I think.
Yeah, they only have 7 players going into this game. I mean, is that game even going to get played now?
Yeah.
You really got to wonder. And because if they make them play with like 7 or even less than that, that's a bad job. You got to postpone the game. You can't put a team
Yeah.
in that kind of competitive disadvantage. But we'll see if that game ends up getting played. Kansas State. We've got Kansas 6-point road favorites, 138 the total. I'm on the Wildcats here in this battle of Kansas here, the Sunflower State. I think Wildcats hang. Kansas has been, especially on the road. Look at Oklahoma earlier this week. Well, actually, that was in Kansas, but they've had some tough games. They've had some games they've had to squeak one out. The Oklahoma game, the Iowa State game at Fog Allen, they won that game by a single point. I mean, they had their hands full. They're not exactly the kind of team that necessarily do we always trust them to win by margin. They haven't always done that. And Kansas State, after a rough beginning to the year, you got to give them credit. You could say they're playing some of their best basketball right now. They've had a couple of nice, solid wins, impressive wins, beating Texas Tech. Kansas State's on the upward trajectory, and they do have a 7-3 home record this year, straight up as well. So Kansas State back-to-back home wins against Texas Tech and Texas. As I mentioned before that, the losses were close. West Virginia on the road, they lose by 3. And then at home against TCU, they lose by 3. I mean, they have been pretty much right in every game. 2-point loss at Oklahoma. There's one game where the game got away from them, and that was against Texas. They lost by 13 at home. Other than that, all Kansas State's done in conference play is either win or be right in the game down to the wire. So I like the Wildcats here, Kansas State +6. Maxwell Smart, by the way, people are wondering where Maxwell is. We offer him a spot on the Saturday show, but he likes to have his weekends off. But you see him Monday to Friday. He will always be here Monday to Friday. It's hey, some guys don't want to work weekends. I can't blame them. It's sometimes difficult for me to get my ass up to do this show on a Saturday morning, but we do it because we want to give you some content and some previews here for college basketball. But yeah, Maxwell's on with Conor Monday to Friday. So there you go. Conor, what do you think here? It's a good one. Kansas State.
I'm with you. I've been high on this K-State team. You talked about all those games, even back to November, they kind of covered, against, I remember back Arkansas, Illinois, they lost both those games by 8. I lean the Sixer. The only problem is Kansas has always just bitch slapped them. This is like their little brother. It seems like they always kick their ass. But I'd only lean the points with K-State a little bit and lean under. If K-State's going to be in the game, they got to be in the 60s like they've been in the last few, like Texas Tech and Texas.
Yeah, it's Bruce Weber. It always pains me to back him sometimes because he's not one of my favorite coaches in the world. But look, they're playing well right now. Kansas State, you got to give them credit for that, turning it around. Notre Dame, Louisville 2.5-point home favorites, 139 the total. So Louisville finally won and covered, but it was against Boston College. It's one of the worst teams in the conference. I'm still not really sold on them being back on track by any stretch of the imagination. For me, it's still fade Louisville. In my opinion, Notre Dame's covered 4 straight games in conference play. And the only loss in the ACC so far was the 79-73 loss at Virginia Tech. No shame in that. It's a good Hokies team. Mike Young, well coached that group. They're coming off a weird scheduling spot where they played Howard, that Martin Luther King Day game. They beat Howard 71-68. Kind of expected that they didn't cover because, out of conference game. Just find a way to get the win and move on. I'm still not ready to trust Louisville just yet. They beat a pretty bad BC team. I would look at Notre Dame here plus the small points on the road. What do you think, Conor?
Yeah, I'm going to be short here. I'm going to pass. These are both teams I'm trying to stay away from lately. You talked about Louisville's woes, Florida State, NC State, Pitt, and then they beat Boston College at home. This is normally a spot Louisville should take care of business. Notre Dame's been feisty at times during the year, so I just don't love it. If I had to do it, I'd lay the 2.5 with Louisville, and I don't like it. So it's just a lean.
Charleston, James Madison. We've got JMU, 3-point home favorites, 157. I actually think James Madison might be the way to go here. I mean, Charleston's been kind of erratic lately. They had a pretty decent showing in non-conference, not been nearly as good lately. James Madison's been good at home, 7-2 straight up, 5-2 ATS at home for them. You look at last year, Charleston actually beat them twice actually it was 2 years ago. They didn't play last year head-to-head, but different circumstances now. But James Madison's playing some pretty solid basketball at home. The total's been hammered up. It's kind of hard to argue with that. James Madison is an over team. They've cashed 5 of the last 6 to the over. Charleston now, of course, with Pat Kelsey here, the Winthrop head coach, they've played much faster this year in terms of their pace. The total's been hammered up. 152.5 is where it opened. It's 157 now, 157.5. But I agree with the move. Should be a lot of points. And I kind of like the Dukes here, JMU. What do you think, Connor?
This is a pass for me here as well. You might be right. They might get back to the scoring ways, but not at 157.5. No way. I don't want anything to do with it. Like you talked about, they just went under in that last game with Wilmington and a bunch of overs before that. But I think the total's just high here.
Mississippi State Egg Bowl basketball version. Mississippi State 11-point home favorites, 133 the total. Revenge spot for Mississippi State. Actually, Ole Miss beat them 82-72 at home earlier this month, and Mississippi State looking to bounce back here in this game. Ole Miss has hit the skids a little bit the last 2 games. I could see you losing to Auburn at home. Auburn, a very good team. How on earth do you lose by 25 at home against Missouri? Oh, my goodness. Oh, my gosh, a horrible game from Ole Miss in that one, 78-53, terrible. It kind of feels like that was such a bad loss. You get Ole Miss playing a lot better here, but you've also got Mississippi State in revenge. Mississippi State off a loss at Florida. You'd expect them to probably have a pretty good game here in this one. And when you look at head-to-head here between these two teams, I think when you look at it, Mississippi State last year, Ole Miss beat them here in this building. Year before, Mississippi State though beat them by 25, and then I believe before that they also had a win by 17 at home the year before. I don't know. Ole Miss is definitely shorthanded still, and missing some key players as well. I'd lay the points or nothing personally. Connor, any thoughts here?
Yeah, the Ole Miss is just playing so bad lately. I can't take it. It's Star Child. No, it's 156.5. I just was throwing it out there. I thought it was 157.5, but 1 point under. Yeah, I want the dog here. I just can't pull the trigger.
All right, let's go to
Be right back.
All right, yeah, no problem. All right, we continue along here. Virginia, NC State. NC State 2-point home favorites, 127 the total in this game. I like NC State here to get the job. I'm not a big Virginia believer this year. I don't think they've played consistently enough. Kevin Keats is maybe not one of his more fluid teams necessarily this year, but I have definitely seen too much up and down play from Virginia. They beat Pittsburgh on the road last game, but still they lose against Wake Forest at home before that, get crushed by North Carolina. They lose at home to Clemson earlier this year. On the road, they've actually not been bad at times. They did beat Syracuse, Clemson, and Pitt on the road. NC State, though, I think you're going to see them maybe look to bounce back here. 62-59 loss at home to Virginia Tech. They did lose to Duke, but Virginia on the road, just offensively, there's not enough for me to really trust them here. 61 points per game. They don't shoot particularly well. And NC State defensively, believe it or not, at home has been a little bit better than their overall numbers. We'll see if that carries over here. I think at a reasonable price like this, a lean here to NC State here in this one. Penn State, Iowa, 11-point home favorites, 143 the total here. I get it. Iowa off the loss against Rutgers definitely feels like a bounce back spot, if you will. But I'm never going to be looking to lay double digits with a team coached by Fran McCaffrey. I'm just not. In a team that, look, actually the defense was good a couple of days ago against Rutgers, but all of a sudden they go ice cold, 17 of 61 from the floor. Now, the Murray brothers, you would expect to be a lot better. I mean, they rely on these guys so much, Chris Murray and especially Keegan Murray. And Keegan Murray was only 5 of 14 in that game, 13 points. He's obviously got to be a whole hell of a lot better than that here against Penn State. Penn State, they're on a 5-game covering streak. Beat Indiana at home, beat Northwestern on the road, hung tough against Purdue, lost by 7. beat Rutgers at home, 66-49. At Ohio State last Sunday, 61-56 losses, 10-point dogs. I'm telling you what, the more this line creeps up, the more I'm going to have to put something on Penn State here. I don't care that it's Iowa off the loss. I mean, Penn State's been scrappy. Penn State's been competitive. I don't trust Iowa ever defensively in a price range where they're laying double figures, even at home. And at home they've been better. I get it, but they had a 5-point win against Maryland as well recently at home. 9-point win against Indiana. Well, guess what? A single-digit win is not going to cash a ticket for you here in this one. So I would lean Penn State here with the points. I agree with Max's take as well. He's in the chat. Welcome in, Maxwell. Smart. There he is. You can see him Monday to Friday. Probably does go over. You got to think there's some positive regression for Iowa shooting offensively after that debacle against Rutgers, where what did they score? 46 points. You got to figure Keegan Murray's going to have a better game. Back home, players shoot better. Players have a better feel offensively on their home floor. And I think you're going to see that here for Iowa. So I would lean to taking it with the points with the Nittany Lions. The over does make some sense as well. 143 here. Conor, what do you think? Penn State, Iowa.
Max nailed it. That's read my mind too. This is over, and I'd only be on Penn State. I like how they play. I think the numbers there, Iowa's going to play a lot better at home. But 10, that's pushing it. Penn State's played well, even on the road.
Western Carolina, Mercer. I'm going to throw this game out there because I think Western Carolina might just be fade material moving forward. I mean, what I've seen from them the last few games has been absolutely dreadful. And not only is it bad play, it's quit. When you lose by 20 against Wofford at home, and then you lose and Furman's a great team, great offensive team, but you lose 38 to them, 88-50. There's some elements of quit in your game right now if you're Western Carolina. Mercer's actually starting to play a little bit better basketball. They've won 3 of their last 4. They beat the Citadel by 7. They beat VMI as well. Can we trust them laying 10 is the question here. It's a big number, but man, Western Carolina's not shown me anything here the last couple of games, to the point where I wonder if they're just crushed and if their spirits are just demoralized right now. They look like they quit. They tapped out in that Furman game. They haven't covered in 4 straight on the road or as road underdogs. Furman should roll, actually. I'm going to lay it here with Mercer. Not with conviction, but I think I got to lay something here with Mercer because that's how bad it is for WCU right now. Any thoughts, Conor?
Yeah, Western Carolina's really hit the shits, lately. They covered a few times when I played them early on. So that defense is pathetic. Mercer's playing better basketball. Even their defense the last couple games, I'm agreeing with you. If I had to play this one, I'd lay it the Bears. Mercer.
All right. I'm going to bring this one up too quickly. Samford, Greensboro. I'm on the over here, even though Greensboro is not an over team. I will say that right now. But the games that have gone over for Greensboro, Citadel, again, not a good defensive team. Pace, shoot a lot of threes. That game went over, got to 143. The Chattanooga game, pretty good offensive team. That game got to 136 in terms of total points. This total right now with Samford, Greensboro is in that mid-130s range. I just think they can find the way to get there because Samford, you look at them, they're giving up 87, 88, 99 points in their last 3 games. They don't play any defense. They play extremely fast. I think we can get Greensboro to score enough against this team, even though they don't play fast, because they're just giving up points in bunches, this Samford team. And I'm just with Samford right now, 130s in total. I'm interested in the over, simple as that. And we have seen Greensboro against some teams being pulled into a higher scoring game, like a Citadel. And I think that can happen here with this game with the game here against Greensboro. What do you think, Conor?
Yeah, I think Samford's defense is that bad Greensboro should get 75 to 80 here. So I'm with you. I lean a little bit to the over. I haven't played it or anything, but I lean that over here.
All right, let's go to Pitt, Clemson. Clemson 9-point home favorites, 131.5 the top. I'm on Pitt here. Clemson's kind of, talk about hitting the shits. It's Clemson doing that. Clemson does this every January. The conference play comes around and they start to struggle. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now with Clemson. They've lost 3 in a row to Notre Dame. How do you lose to Boston College? And then you get romped by Syracuse after that. All Pitt does is compete in a lot of these games. They had one game where in the second half it got away from them against Syracuse. and it just had a bad second half, and that game was close at halftime. But other than that, they almost beat Louisville, lose by 1 to Notre Dame, beat Boston College, beat Louisville the second time around, lose by 5 against Virginia. They just compete. And since they got Burton back, it's been a different Pitt team. They've gotten some bodies back. Pitt plus the points. It's just Clemson laying 9 right now against anybody. No, thank you. Pitt Panthers for me. Conor, Pitt, Clemson.
Clemson's been better at home. But I think Pittsburgh, their defense, I just want them to score enough here. That was the whole problem, that game against Syracuse, because I was on that. But I think you're right. I really wanted 10, but I'm still good with 9 here. I think Pittsburgh can hang in here.
How about a good one here, Conor, in the Missouri Valley, Drake, Northern Iowa? This should be a very good matchup here. We've got Northern Iowa, 2.5, 3-point home favorites, 142 the total. In this game, man, really good basketball game. Tough to predict here because I like both of these teams. You got Northern Iowa looking to bounce back, right? Shocked by Valpo. I kind of thought though that spot was a Valpo spot, and it kind of played out that way in that game. We'll see if they can make amends for that here in this game with Drake and Northern Iowa. Should be a good one here. Drake, all 5 starters from last year's team back, and look. Getting Roman Penn back has really helped them as well, definitely in terms of their offensive game. The Bulldogs, though, you look at them and you look at Northern Iowa defensively, they've been not as good this year, and they've actually played some higher scoring games. That's the shocking part here about Northern Iowa. They've played pretty good offensive basketball. Keep an eye on the status, though. I believe A.J. Green, who is, of course, critical here for this Northern Iowa team. Keep an eye on whether he plays here for them. There's questions about that. So, and obviously, he is a huge component of what makes things go here.
I have him out.
Yeah, that's a concern. That's
Max.
A concern. Yeah, and look, it's part of the reason why, and you got to be concerned about that a little bit here going into this matchup here. But we're talking about a Drake team that's been burning money. They haven't been covering anything. Remember, they were a point spread machine last year. They've been a point spread failure, a point spread flop this year. They have not been any good covering numbers. It kind of feels like this is potentially Northern Iowa's spot. I understand why they're favored. I'd lean Wildcats. Or Panthers, I should say, in this game a little bit. Northern Iowa laying the 2.5, 3. I'd look over the total as well, 141.5. I think it's, again, the odds makers have really been slow at the trigger finger, Conor, in terms of adjusting these totals on Northern Iowa this year. It's kind of changed their spots. Better offensively, worse defensively, and now they've gone over in 8 straight games. When you find a team total streak like this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like over 141.5. Conor, what do you think?
Yeah, I was looking through that too. This just might be low enough, this number, like you're talking about. There's just I don't want Drake. I just maybe another spot. They're catching more points. I lean Northern Iowa. I have not bet this game yet, so that's just a lean.
LSU, Tennessee, good one in the SEC. Tennessee, 6-point home favorites, 131 the total. I'm not even going to talk about Xavier Pinson's status. I'm sick of talking about it. It just feels like I have to bring it up every time we talk LSU. If he plays, he plays. If he doesn't, he doesn't. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think he's going to, though. And now you've got Darius Days, with a minor ankle sprain. And, you could be down. I want to take LSU here in this game because I don't fully trust Tennessee. Now, Tennessee already lost at LSU earlier this year, so it's a revenge spot. But I don't really think Tennessee is a legit contender. I don't. All right? You don't get crushed by Kentucky like that. You're supposed to be this big-time defensive team, and you give up 107 points. No, I've never bought into Tennessee this year as a legit contender because, A, they always seem to flop when the going gets tough, and B, it's Rick Barnes. When's the last time we see Rick Barnes do something big in the tournament? We never see it. So I want to I just want to wait this out. We'll see if Days suits up. I don't think Pinson's going to be back for LSU. I kind of want to take LSU here. It is a revenge spot for Tennessee, but not at 6. No way am I laying 6 with Tennessee. I'll say that right now. Conor, anything here? LSU, Tennessee.
No, pass for me too. I don't want Tennessee. I don't know. It seemed like that game against Kentucky was just the beginning of the downfall. That they're not as good as they are every single year, like you mentioned it, and they just start fading away. I'm not going to lay 6 with Tennessee. Yeah, so it's a pass for me. If I had to, I'd look at LSU, but I have not bet it.
All right, USC, Utah. Could this be a dangerous spot for the road favorite? We got the Trojans 5.5, 6-point road favorites, 138 now. I think it could be. This is why Craig Smith's a good coach. He was good at Utah State. He's going to be good here at Utah. Yeah, the team got their ass kicked early in the season, had some issues, had some injuries, COVID disruptions, all that. Now they're starting to put it together, and that's what good coaches do. They get the team to be better as the season goes on. You know, they've been more competitive, and it starts with that. Yeah, they've lost 7 in a row. I get it. They're still looking for that elusive win. But, you know, against Arizona, better, more competitive effort. Against Arizona State, probably could have won that game, maybe should have won that game, lost by 2. UCLA at home the last game. You know, a very good Bruins team. Obviously, national championship game last year. 63-58. Or, sorry, Final Four last year. 63-58. They end up losing to UCLA in that game. Right in it from start to finish in that one. I'm telling you what, Utah, this dangerous game here for USC. And I still go back to the fact, Connor, that USC from the free throw line is not good. 61% for the season. And, you know, 79%, by the way, for Utah. It's a huge edge at home. And USC's coming off a hard-fought, grinding 61-58 road win at Colorado. You know damn well, and we've seen this with the Pac-12 for years, the Utah-Colorado or vice versa road trip, back-to-back games where you're playing 2 games in 3 days in that thin air, high altitude elevation. It's not easy. I think USC might have their hands full here. I'd lean to the home dog. Any thoughts here, Connor?
Yeah, you nailed everything I was going to say about the trip there. And you saw it, like SC just got by that 2.5. They should, you know, they won by 3 in that Colorado game, but it was close. Same thing here. Utah covered against UCLA. Now they dropped this a little bit with SC. I'd only be on Utah. They just play well at home. This is their spot.
Dayton, George Mason. I like Kim English's team here as a home dog. Look, Dayton's coming off a drubbing over St. Bonaventure. They just own St. Bonaventure, and we know Dayton's very good at home. They bring it with them on the road here against this George Mason Patriots team. George Mason 5-1 straight up at home. Dayton coming off that big win. You look at on the road, they haven't played anybody of this as good as George. The Duquesne's not as good as George Mason. George Washington ain't as good as George Mason. And George Mason coming off the loss at George Washington. I think maybe they had their eyes on this game tonight against Dayton. Remember, they took Kansas. They played very well against Kansas on New Year's Day earlier this month as well with George Mason. They were right in that game. I just get that sense that this is a dangerous game for Dayton. Very dangerous, in my opinion. I'd look to George Mason a little bit here. Any thoughts, Connor?
No, this could be dangerous for Dayton, but I don't know if George Mason is good enough here. And when I was looking at this game last night, I wanted just a few more points than what it is at. You know, I wanted 4.5, 5. It's 2.5.
All right, Furman and Wofford. Good game. These are SoCon rivals. Wofford 2-point favorites. 143 the total in this one. I'll tell you what, Furman's a dog. I'm not betting against Furman. Furman's a very good basketball. Not that Wofford isn't. Wofford's very good. They've won 3 in a row, 4 of their last 5. I'm a big Wofford fan, Furman fan. They have been very, very good in conference play. They've won 4 of their last 5. The only loss at Chattanooga by 2. They beat Greensboro on the road. They're very capable of playing good on the road, this Paladins team. It's been a road-heavy series as well, and the underdog has cashed in 7 straight. Now, the underdog's always been Wofford, in this series history recently. Now, Furman is the team catching a few points here. I like Furman here. I really do. +2. You don't get Furman at an underdog number very often. As far as the total goes, you look at the recent matchups, there's been a lot more unders than overs in the series history, so I'm kind of lukewarm on the total. It's probably in a good spot. I kind of like Furman here, though, +2. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, but there's not a lot of value. I just think there's 2 good basketball teams. Yep. I think the line's pretty straight here. It was a pass for me.
All right, Southern Illinois, Bradley. We've got Bradley 4.5-point home favorites, 128.5 the total in this game. When I look at this matchup here, I think we've got a situation where, Southern Illinois plays slow, but the Salukis are a very good 3-point shooting team, and Bradley's not great defending the three, and Bradley should have some size down low with their offense against Southern Illinois. So I think both teams offensively will have success. And even at 128.5, I think that game can go over that number. Very low total there. I think it can get over that, though. What do you think, Conor?
I think it can sneak over as well. I've always said, I don't know if I've told you this, Southern Illinois, whether it's side total, this team I can never figure out. They have great shooting nights, and then they have the struggle to get to 60. Bradley, the way they play, this should go over. I lean that way. I haven't even really dug into that game much.
All right, North Carolina and Wake Forest. Oh, boy, this should be a good one. Wake Forest, 1-point home favorites, 150.5 the total. All I see is Wake Forest. They keep getting better. And not a shock. I'm a Steve Forbes fan. Great job at East Tennessee State. And I knew, even taking over a shit show from Danny Manning, who drove this program into the dumpster, that he would get it back on track. And, man, they beat Florida State, Syracuse at home. Road win at Virginia, crushing Georgia Tech, 80-64. The only loss was a game against Duke at home. They didn't play well, and Duke was kind of angry because they lost to Miami the game before that. I'm a buyer in the Deacons. I've said that all year on every college show I've done. Wake Forest, to me, is going to win this game, in my opinion. It's just too flighty and too inconsistent, North Carolina. Yeah, North Carolina's coming off a shellacking against Miami. They want to play better, but Wake Forest, for me, I'm riding this team. I love this team and the way they keep getting better right now. They've got good guard play. Jake Laravia inside, good balance, getting better defensively, great coach. Give me Wake. What do you think, Conor?
This is a pass for me as well. I didn't see a ton of value. I think Wake is pretty solid at home. I like them, but they're laying a couple here. So if you don't want to take the 1.5, you can take it money line. North Carolina, laid the egg against Miami. They played well on the road. What team are we going to get with the Tar Heels? I'm not so sure. They might be able to push around Wake Forest a little bit. It should be a good game. I just didn't see a ton of betting value on this one.
All right, Texas A&M, Arkansas. Arkansas 9-point home favorites, 144.5 the total in this one. You can sense Arkansas starting to percolate, I guess is the word you would use. Starting to play better. They've won 3 in a row now after a little bit of a swoon there, crushing Missouri, beating LSU. Great road win against LSU. South Carolina beating them big at home. I worry about Texas A&M here. They got to go on now. They played good on the road, but Missouri and Georgia, 2 of the worst teams in the conference. It's nothing to write home about. I would look maybe toward Arkansas to roll here. I like the over as well. You look at series history, 5 straight overs head-to-head between the Aggies and the Razorbacks. Arkansas, certainly a team that can light it up at home, and the total's reasonable, 144. I like the favorite. I like the over as well. What do you think, C-Mac?
This was a pass for me. I wanted to find a way to bet A&M, but I couldn't get there. And you talked about Arkansas, who looked really bad the last, 3 straight losses to Miss State, Vandy, and A&M. Then they come back, big win, Missouri, Louisiana, and South Carolina. They are always better at home, but I'm not going to lay 9 with them. 8 here.
All right. By the way, I forgot to mention I would lean over the total with Furman and Wofford. I was hoping for a better number, but I would still lean over. 2 very good offensive
What's
teams.
It 141?
143.5. Yeah,
143.
That total. I still am interested in the over a little bit. How about this one in the Mountain West? Only a couple games left. We'll do the 2 games, and then we'll wrap it up and do best bets. Boise State, San Diego State. San Diego State, 4.5-point home favorites, 122.5 the total in this game. Should be a good matchup. 2 of the better teams in the Mountain West Conference going head-to-head here in this one. Boise State, 12 straight games for them that they've won. Perfect 5-0 in conference play. They're really starting to play some really nice basketball, this Boise State team. We'll see how they fare here in this one. The one concern that I would have here for Boise is the spot here. Played a lot of basketball lately in a very short period of time because of rescheduled games. Now I believe this is going to be, in the last 10 days, like their 4th or 5th game, and they've traveled a lot. Are they going to be able to hang in there against San Diego State, who've got that suffocating defense, and they're starting to really ramp it up at that end of the floor? And this kind of reminds me of the trap I fell into a few weeks ago. I took Colorado State as a road dog at San Diego State, thinking they're ready to take on the Aztecs, and the money kept trickling in a little bit on San Diego State, and San Diego State rolled them in that game. This kind of feels like that, right? Boise, 12 in a row, and they're 4.5, 5-point road underdogs in this game, and they've won 12 in a row. They're rolling. I kind of sense San Diego State's the side here, laying the 4.5 in this one. Look, maybe Boise's that good right now, and they find a way once again. But when I look at this matchup here, you talk about San Diego State, maybe that they've been off for a little bit of time because of the COVID pause, but Boise State's, I think, in the worst kind of situation here where they've played a lot of games in a short period of time, kind of irregular travel. And the Aztecs defense is no joke. And if you're fatigued and you don't have the shooting legs against them, you think that they're definitely going to end up maybe struggling offensively. I'd lean to the under here as well in this game with Boise and San Diego State. But I think the Aztecs can do enough in terms of their balance. Obviously, Matt Bradley is always huge for them, critical component to this team's success. I think when you look at it here, lean under. And I think the fact that Boise is 12 wins in a row, but catching points, and now the money's trickling in on San Diego State kind of tells you what you need to know, that maybe the Aztecs are the side here in this one, even though Boise's been just ripping it up lately. This is a tough spot, I think, for them. Conor, what do you think here? Good one in the Mountain West.
Yeah, they played a bunch. You lean under, but not a lot of wiggle room at 122 around there. San Diego State, though, has been off for forever. I mean, one game in the last that Colorado State game, the last, 18 days or something like that?
Yep.
20 days. So weird long layoff with them. They're going to start playing a bunch of games. They might be fresh cover here. I've been big on Boise. They got it done the other night against Nevada UNR Friday night. Tough spot. Yeah, I don't know if I bet it. If I do, I'd lean San Diego State a little bit, but I haven't bet it.
All right, this is the final game we will break down, and then we'll get to best bets coming up next here. Final game, UCLA against Colorado. We've got UCLA 4-point road favorites, 136 the total here in this game. Kind of like what we talked about, right, Conor, with USC? Here's UCLA doing the Utah-Colorado road trip, 2 games in 3 days in reverse. They did Utah first, then Colorado. They escaped 63-58 against Utah in that game, did not cover. Now they play Colorado off a home loss to USC, 61-58. I think it sets up well for Colorado. Look, UCLA, you got Mick Cronin bitching about the situation they can't have, which is ridiculous, by the way. I actually do back him up here on this. It is insane that we're packing Crypto Arena with Kings fans and Lakers fans and Clippers fans for hockey and basketball games there, and we can't put anybody in Pauley Pavilion for home games. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But that's another story. I just think they've got to get past this tough stretch. They haven't exactly been playing great ball. They've had fits and starts. They've had a couple key players out lately due to injury and COVID as well. And look, they've been a point spread burner. And I know they beat Colorado in December, 73-61 at home, but it's a revenge spot for Colorado. UCLA is 1-5-1 against the spread in their last 7 games. So they have really been an overvalued team. I'd only look to the Buffs here. You can get them at 3.5, 4 as home underdogs. Dare UCLA to win by margin, which is not something they've been able to do lately. What do you think here, Conor? UCLA, Colorado.
Yeah, the only thing is, you could have got 5 last night, still 3.5. I think it's close. This trip is tough. UCLA got it done against Utah. They didn't cover, and then you got to go to Colorado. Just a bad spot. It's the Buffs or nothing here.
All right, great stuff with Conor Mack, and thank you, community of new knowledge. Ian, do you ever rest, bro? No, it kind of feels like I don't because of all the time I'm on the air and doing shows, but hey, we do it because we enjoy it. Thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words. All right, great stuff. 153 live viewers watching Net Profit College Basketball Show here on a Saturday morning. Hit that like button on the way out if you haven't done so already. We will come back with best bets from Conor Mack and myself coming on up right after this. Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Manscaped, promo code Pub Sports. Get 20% off your purchase. Lawnmower 4.0 or any Manscaped product. Get 20% off using promo code Pub Sports and mybookie.ag. Promo code Pub Sports. A great time of year. We got NFL divisional playoffs this weekend, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC. Get on board, sign up for an account, mybookie.ag. Bitcoin accepted currency for your deposit as well. Mybookie.ag, promo code Pub Sports. All right, it's time for Best Bets here to wrap up this edition of Net Profit College Basketball Show. Conor Mack, let's start with you. Always a challenge to pick one best bet on a Saturday college basketball card, but we'll do the best we can. Conor, what do you think for best bet?
I'm going to go on one that we didn't talk about. I took it last night, 19.5. Both these teams got injuries and guys out on both sides. But I think they can score enough, and that's East Carolina getting the points against Houston. You can still get 19, I believe. Taking the points with them.
Yeah, I mean, big underdog there. And East Carolina's been competitive in a lot of games this year. Very unfortunate collapse for them against Central Florida, their last game. But they've been pretty solid and competitive here this year. Getting 19.5. East Carolina plus 19.5 against Houston. Best bet for Conor Mack on this Saturday college basketball show. My best bet coming into this one, I'm going to rock with Pitt plus 9 against Clemson. To me, it's just Clemson's a fade. Clemson's not. But Clemson losing to Boston College at home, and now you're laying 9 against Pitt. And Pitt is not great, but what they do is they really, in spite of all the problems in the offseason and wondering if Jeff Capel's going to lose his job, he has found a way to at least have this team stay competitive, play hard, play tough, play solid defense. Clemson's just not a team I'm willing to trust here as a 9-point favorite right now, given their current tailspin. Pitt Panthers have been a money machine lately. They've been putting money in their backers' pockets, and I think they do so one more time here. Pitt plus 9 against Clemson for my best bet on this Saturday college basketball card. And that'll wrap up this edition of Net Profit College Basketball. We thank everybody for joining us. 159 live viewers now. Hit the like button on the way out. Conor Mack, Maxwell Smart will be back with you on Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Net Profit Show. And don't forget as well, UFC later today, live stream, huge UFC card tonight. Make sure you tune into that with the Pub Sports Radio UFC crew. That'll be a lot of fun as well. Great stuff with Conor Mack. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again next Saturday for the Net Profit Saturday Show, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on Pub Sports Radio.